My name is Miki Tomita, and I'm coming in from Palolo, as I mentioned, and we are going to talk about building those foundations of aloha in our personal and professional journeys. And we'll go ahead and get started. So, usually in our conversations, we introduce ourselves, and so I want to make sure that I do that to honor you, and also to honor my family, and those that have raised me. So, ano ai kako. My name is Miki Tomita, very recently Okamoto. And I am calling in from Palolo, which is where I rest my head. My heart is and always will be in Maui. So you can see my Palolo view, which is from Laiahi to Waikiki, right over Aunty Kahuna's house. That's next door to me. And on the other side of that is the view from Waihe, right by the golf course that my grandpa used to golf like every weekend and take me there, and looking up at Haleakala. So I was born and raised in Pukalani, and my parents now live in Wailuku. Um, and I was just there yesterday at Maalaya, actually, to help coordinate when Hokulea comes there next in October. And so, just always bringing in Maui because it's such my healing space. There's my daughter Mayumi, who is my best friend and just my joy in life and my gift and just everything. I always tell people we talk about our names and our genealogy, but my most sacred name wasn't one that I was born with, although I love my parents and what they gave me. But my most sacred name is mom, and I didn't earn that one until almost 16 years ago. So just, I'm gonna start crying. If you were in my first session, and if you weren't and you know me already, I cry all the time. It's sort of just my resting state. And it's joy and it's sadness and it's grief and it's celebration. And it's because everybody has a universe inside of them. Mine is mostly ocean. It comes out through my eyeballs all the time. And I am just constantly weeping. So just so you know, that's also just my sign that I'm comfortable. I used to be at the Polynesian Voyaging Society as the education lead during Mālama Honua and some of that time, and now I'm a volunteer. I bring to you this presentation today on behalf of my mentor and teacher Pono Shim, who when he passed away 2 years ago, in April of 2022, um, one of the things that he did was identify a successor to his practice. There are thousands of his students, myself amongst them, and many of you in this room, I think, as well. But one of the last things that he did was make sure to be very clear with me that I was named his successor, and that I should continue the practices that Aunty Pilahi gave to him and share that with the world. So I continue to bring you Uncle Pono, because that's my kuleana that I have as his student. I also work with I'm on the national faculty for the Center for Love and Justice, and in that, as I am a lifetime educator, most of my work focuses on anti-colonial and liberatory school design. So really designing for belonging, equity, and access for all students, all youth, and all people, really, from keiki to kupuna. So that's me. I also identify as a fifth generation settler colonizer. My family originally came to Hawaii indentured to the sugar plantations from Japan, and has continued to be in that space. And yeah, just sharing as much about me as I can in a short amount of time. But I want to bring in Uncle Pono because that's part of what this building foundations of aloha is for us. Um, and so I want to pause for just 30 seconds. This is not for you to put in the chat. We'll be sharing about how our thinking about aloha either changed or was made more fixed or pa'a throughout this presentation or this sharing. But just taking a moment to think about, what is aloha to you? What does it feel like? What does it sound like? What does it feel like on the inside and the outside for you? And we'll be going through and walking through several different definitions provided by different aloha practitioners of what aloha is or could be. But I want to start with just us thinking in our own heads and in our own hearts, what is aloha to me? And so we'll take a few breaths and really think about what aloha is in our unique experiences and what we think its definition or its manifestation might be like. And then we'll move on. from some very literal translations or ho'opukaku down to some kauna or symbolic translations, and then into nohuna or spiritual translations given by Aunty Pilahi. Actually, now we're going to start with a spiritual one. It's by Nana Veary. So flip that order. Nana Veary wrote a book called Change We Must, amongst other things. She is a known, it was a spiritual journey, the book Change We Must. And she's a known Hawaiian healer and cultural practitioner, and one of Uncle Pono's mentors as well. And in her book, she shares, and again, this is not a practice that all Hawaiian linguists nor Hawaiian cultural practitioners are comfortable with or practice themselves. A good friend of mine, we just spent an hour at the Kahului airport together debating about the utility and perhaps the detriment of parsing language into containers of meaning. And so it's a really cool, loving, olu olu, like gentle and strong conversation we had, and I appreciated his love for me greatly in that, in wanting to help me learn more. And so, but I share with you, this is one of Nana Veary's definitions that she shared in Change We Must, and she says alo, right, the face, means the bosom or the center of the universe, and I think she meant like the face of being, the face of like face to face with the center of the universe, and ha is the breath of God. So she says, she continues to say, the word is imbued with a great deal of power. I do not use it casually. Aloha is a feeling. It's a recognition of the divine. It's not just a word or a greeting. And this was echoed by Aunty Pilahi actually in several presentations that she did in the 60s and I think into the 70s. And it might even be in the book that she wrote, that aloha was not the way that we use it in contemporary use, which was it's a greeting. We might mean it at a very deep level as well, but for sure it means, people say love, compassion, kindness, right? It's a hello and goodbye. Like it does mean all those things. But Nana Veary and Aunty Pilahi would say that it's such a sacred word that it wasn't used in company of strangers unless you really meant it. And so Aunty Pilahi taught people to say ano ai kako instead, which means I greet you in oneness. So I always tell people ano ai kako the first time I meet you, and I hope and I have faith that by the time we part, aloha will be the way that I greet you every time from now on, because that is what we have established together. And so just thinking about what that aloha practice is, and to give yourself the grace that, like, what if you meet somebody and the first thing you say to them is aloha, but like really you don't like them? Yeah, so maybe just thinking about a different way to greet someone, so you're not making that promise of like, I'm gonna aloha you, even if it's like the hardest thing ever. So no, just sharing that. The other definition or way of presenting aloha that I wanted to bring up is this parts of this poster that's found at the Kaului airport. The black and orange poster that you see when you're walking out of the Hawaiian Airlines terminal towards the bathrooms and the gift store. This is an adaptation of that poster. You'll see that it was based on the contributions of Uncle Ramsey Tom and Uncle Pono Shim. And so in this one, we see Aunty Pilahi and the gift that she gave to the world in 1970 at the governor's conference on the year 2000. They were looking for, how do we conduct ourselves, make decisions, create a way of being in the world so that we have the best Hawaii, the Hawaii that we want by the year 2000. So 30 years in the future. How do we begin to take steps now so that we know what direction do we want to go in? How will we know we're going? And kind of like my other boss, Nainoa Thompson, who talks about like, how will we know that we're going in the direction that we want to go in? How do we check our course? How do we calibrate? And so Aunty Pilahi offered this aloha wisdom, akahai, lokahi, olu olu, ha'aha'a, and ahunui, as those directional cues. Like, if you're doing these things, you'll get to the right destination. If you're doing these things, you'll treat each other in the way that you need to, including yourself. So akahai, kindness and grace expressed in tenderness. Lokahi, unity, unbroken, expressed in harmony. Olu olu, agreeable or gentle, expressed with pleasantness. Ha'aha'a, humility, to be expressed with modesty. And ahonui, patience, to be expressed with perseverance. And when she provided this, she was also at the time, as I mentioned, she was mentoring and teaching a number of different cultural practitioners that were in different sectors, whether they were hakumele or they were kumuhula or they were healers. She had students that were in and people that she met and taught in different areas. And Uncle Pono, being her grandnephew, was one of them, and he received a very specific version of her practice or of her teachings, and that I'll share with you. But all of that is to say that I think in what they call Pilahi's prophecy or Aunty Pilahi's quote, the world will turn to Hawaii as they search for world peace because Hawaii has the key, and that key is aloha. Um, they were all different kind of shades. Like aloha might be the master key that helps unlock every door and also locks the ones that we never want opened again. It might be the one that takes on different shapes depending on what's needed at the time. I mean, it's not one set thing, I don't think. I think it's all things. And so we can think about that as we move through this practice. Um, Aloha is also a law. So Hawaii Revised Statute 575 is part of our Hawaii Constitution. This was co-authored by Aunty Pilahi and Uncle Pono's dad, Alvin Shim, and put into statute. And so it is actually supposed to be the law that guides all the other laws of the land here. After working at the state capitol, I would say sometimes, maybe, it might be sleeping, waiting for its moment, might be aho nui, waiting for the moment to actually, actualize and materialize. But and then in some people, definitely there. It is definitely in the way that some of our legislatures and legislative bodies conduct themselves. And in others, I think we're still on that growth trajectory. So just to say, this is another version that was Aunty Pilahi's words that were captured into a law and put into Hawaii Revised Statutes. So it is a part of our state lawmaking system. And then this is just this photograph of Aunty Pilahi from what, if it was 1970, and this was a newspaper clipping, this would have been from the Star Bulletin, because it wouldn't have been Star Advertiser yet. Is that correct? Because there used to be Star Bulletin and Honolulu Advertiser, and then they combined. So I think this is from the Star Bulletin. And it shares what she shared with the audience at this conference, and then also says, like, we've all been here, these hundreds of delegates from all over the Pacific, every industry in Hawaii, every decision maker and lawmaker are here, and yet she stood up on the stage, from what I've been told, ascended the stage in this red mu'u and grabbed the microphone and shared these teachings of aloha. And they said, oh, she's got the answer, we don't need to, we were here for 4 days and she just has everything. And so that was part of what she shared, that akahai lokahi olu olu ha'aha and aponui. And then again, bringing Uncle Pono in, because this is his presentation really, that in 1976, the way he describes this moment, his dad, Uncle Alvin, used to take him to all of these high level sort of meetings. Uncle Alvin was, um, it's interesting. Uncle Pono is like my mentor, and I'm his kako'o, and I was with him for many of the events in the 2 years before his passing. And Nainoa Thompson is another one of my mentors, I would say, and I'm his kako'o still at times, even though I don't work for him anymore. But their fathers together, Pinky Thompson and Alvin Shim, brought so much change to Hawaii and so much goodness. Native Hawaiian Education Act, Alulike program, like they wrote the original Alulike program grant, like all these things that came from these two men. But it was guided by Aunty Pilahi, so much of it. And so Uncle Pono goes to this meeting of elders in Waimanalo, people talking about 1976. You can imagine it was this room full of people that were advocating for change, that were grieving the a culture and a practice on the brink of extinction in some cases. This was the resurrection of Polynesian wayfinding. This was Hawaiian language struggling to come back into not just being legal but into practice. This was anti-military movements that could have been happening at Makua, Kaho'olawe, all of that in the midst of this time. And they were all gathered in this room in Waimanalo, and Uncle Pono was the only teenager there, watching Aunty Pilahi moderate and be And after everybody left, she took him for this walk on the beach and said, you know, I'm going to teach you some things, and you're not to teach them to others until I tell you, which she didn't for decades. And she said, I'm going to teach you some words and their meanings and how to practice them in relationships with others. I want you to learn to think Hawaiian, not speak Hawaiian. I want you to know Hawaiian thought. For if you think Hawaiian, regardless of the language you use, it will be the language of aloha. And aloha is the language which reveals the connection to all people. And so I will bring Uncle Pono in. This part of the video is a little less than 10 minutes, I think. And so we'll hear from him, and I'm just really excited that I get to share him with you. I'm happy. So we'll get started with that.
And she said, I am going to share with you the deeper meanings of what it means to live in this place and who we are. And I just want you to practice. And so she started to share, amongst other things, this deeper meaning of aloha that I had never heard from her, nor heard from her after. It was just this one time. And it wasn't what I heard her sharing with everyone else. She explained to me that almost all Hawaiian words have three interpretations. There is a literal translation, known as the ho'opukaku. And mahalo means thank you. That there's this literal interpretation of it. Thank you, mahalo. Simple. Then there's the kauna, which is that poetic essence of our language, the beauty of the poetry of our language, the metaphors of our language. And that's the second. And then she said, and then there's a third. And the third is known as the noahuna. It's a spiritual, esoteric meaning of our words. And she said, the first two were taught, but the third was not taught, it's passed. And it's passed to the learned ones known as the kahuna. And she said, I am going to share with you the deeper meanings of the words that make up the essence of who we are, and I want you to practice living them. So when she shared aloha with others, and she began with akakai, with me she began with ahonui, the last A. And the reason why she said she's beginning with ahonui is because she was beginning with the ha. The ha of aloha. Because she said the ha is the essence of who we are. And for us, it begins with our center, our ha, our breath. It always begins there. So she says, you go back to the ha. She even related it to other cultures or heritage. She said the Japanese, it's ki, ki-ai. Chinese, they call it chi, the chi, energy. For us, we call it ha, because it's the essence of our breath. It begins there. So she begins with the ah of the ha, the ahonui. And the literal translation of ahonui is perseverance. Persistence is its essence. And she tells me, patience and perseverance. And she tells me that ahonui means waiting for the moment. And she said, you are ahonui, direct. You are ahonui. You're waiting for the moment because the moment is coming. And it may not come in your lifetime. But you are always prepared and preparing others for the moment. You are ahonui. Now notice she expands it from just my segment of life to before and after me. That ahonui is, I'm waiting for the moment, but that moment has implications much beyond me. So she's expanding me that it may not come in my time, but I am always waiting and prepared for the moment that could not possibly come in my time. So it takes us beyond generations. And if you think about patience, and what is the image of someone who's being patient? The image of someone who's being patient is almost like boredom, you know. It's like, I'm being patient. And what's the image of ahonui that she gave me, waiting for the moment? Present, alert, waiting, anticipating. Very different than what I see most people interpret is ahonui, the literal translation. And she said, an eagle, a hawk, a shark are never patient. They're always waiting for the moment. She said, you are ahonui. Then she jumps to ha'aha'a. And ha'aha'a, most people know as humility. That's what she shares. And she says, ha'aha'a means to be empty. To go to emptiness, to become nothing. To go to emptiness, to go to zero. She said, only when you're empty can you receive. Ha'aha'a means empty. And so you need to find emptiness. And then what she does is she puts the ha'aha'a, and the ahonui together, the ha, and she ha's me. And she says the moment of emptiness. That when you ha, you go to a moment of emptiness. And she went to that moment of emptiness, and then after she hits that moment of emptiness, she inhales, and now she's fulfilled again. And she says, ha'aha'a ahonui is the moment of emptiness. And everything begins there.
Hi,
All
Miki.
connection.
Can you hear me?
So now she's telling me that
can you
it's all
check
about connection.
Your
All connection
chat?
is preceded
Check
by
the
a moment of
yeah,
emptiness.
I have a question for you
So
there.
if you want to
Thank you.
connect with someone or something, what you need to do is find the moment of emptiness. You must ha. And find it. Then what she does is she jumps to akahai. Akahai, people know as kindness. I know akahai as grace. She said, akahai is with white gloves, grace. You are akahai. That when you engage with people, you engage so that it's very clean. That when you leave them clean. It's stainless. You don't leave your dust, you don't leave your stain on them. That's what grace is. You leave them clean. That's akahai. Then she jumped to olu olu. So she's all over the map with me. Olu olu, why olu olu? She said, because like akahai, olu olu is how you engage with somebody. And she said, olu olu, normally the pleasantness, but she said it's gentle. And the image she gave me is like you're touching a baby, gentle like you're carrying a baby. You're not here to bruise or scar a baby. People understand the gentleness of aloha. What they mistake is the opposite side. The Chinese or Japanese, in the Buddhist faith, the yin and the yang. What is that opposite of gentleness? And it's the strength. So the gentleness enough to carry the baby, but the strength to never ever drop baby. And it's the strength to hold this baby without injuring this baby. That's the side that people don't understand about our values, how strong they are. So now you have what's remaining is lokahi. And she finishes lokahi by saying lokahi doesn't mean unity. And how she deconstructs it for me is she asked me, what is unity? And I'm simple-minded. I think unity is making everybody together. She said, yes, making everyone one. She said, what is one? And she proceeded to teach me. E kahi, kahi. Lokahi, kahi, one. And then to make everybody one is ho'o. Ho'o kahi. She said, that's unity. And she said, the problem's not Hawaiian. The problem is English. Everybody's using a word. They don't understand what it means. That's ho'o kahi, making everybody one. And what's the method? She said, we argue, we debate, we reason. She said, that's not lokahi. Lokahi, alokahi. Alo, in the presence of, in the face of, kahi. And then she drops the A and she said, lokahi. Alokahi, lokahi. She says, lokahi means unbroken, connected, whole, already whole. She said, we all enter this universe lokahi, connected. But our economic, political, education, religious, geographic systems, everything teaches us that we're broken, and we spend all of our time trying to ho'okahi everybody with ourselves. And she said, not going to happen. She proceeded to tell me that I'm going to be a storyteller, and that when I tell my stories, it is to tell them in a way that comes up into people, and they experience lokahi. They experience the connection. not me trying to ho'okahi them with me. But it comes up, we're one.
Okay. So that was Uncle Pono, and I know some people had requested in the chat the video links, so we put them in there. You should also be able to see them through the slide deck, and I encourage you. I mean, I still listen to his videos every day, pretty much. And so they are there for us, and our newly formed Mālama Pono Foundation, which is the nonprofit that we established in his legacy and memory, but also to perpetuate his teachings. That should be coming online next year, and so we'll be able to see a lot more of that. We have thousands of hours of Zoom recordings from during COVID. And so we're making those into kind of self-directed learning explorations where you and Uncle Pono can go on your journey together um, without anybody else being there with you. It's your choose your own adventure time with Uncle Pono. One of the things that happened when he passed was he's so rascal. I love him so dearly, and he was so rascal too. But somebody told me I get all these calls the day he passed from people in text. They're like, I just felt Uncle Pono here. I just saw Uncle Pono this. And, I was in the garden and he was there with me. And I was like, that rascal, he got to be everywhere with everybody all at once. That's everything he ever wanted. And so he achieved it. He could be with all of us at the same time. Um, so we continue his practice. I wanted to share also in this particular slide, slide 10, that this is kind of the summary, right? Uncle Pono shared in his video, as does Aunty Pilahi's other students, Aunty Manu Meyer in particular. I went to go co-teach or guest teach at her class, and I walked in, and on the board was Ho'opukaku, Kauna, and Noahuna. And I was like, I'm so glad we're talking about all three different levels and layers all the time. And so anytime you have a word, and I think Hawaiian, yes, in particular, but also in any language that we're speaking, there is a literal that is true and is there, and then there is the symbolic, right? And then there is the spiritual. And we may not often get to the spiritual, but we for surely get to the symbolic. One of my best friends, her favorite word is awesome. And if you can imagine her response when somebody says something that she doesn't like, she's like, awesome. Literal is awesome. Her tone and her symbolism makes you think that maybe she doesn't think it's that awesome, right? Or if she sees something that she's like, that's awesome already. Literal awesome is still there, but the symbolic is different. And so I think we carry all of these all the time. I don't know what the spiritual meaning for her of awesome is. I think it is sort of her spirit word because she uses it all the time. But just thinking about all those layers being present. And so this was what Aunty Pilahi gave to the world. And in that gave Uncle Pono his particular version, which starts with Ahonui. And what I want to offer is that because she gave him the practices that she did and gave him the directions that she did when he was still such a child, really a teenager, he took it literally. She said, I'm going to teach you some things and you don't share with other people, and I want you to practice them. And so he built practices around them like a good boy. He's like, I'm going to do what my auntie said. I'm going to practice. And so he did. And so when she said akahai is kindness, it's with white gloves, over the decades that he was practicing by himself, what he eventually passed on to us as his students was to always leave things better than you find them. That is the practice that he got from his akahai gift that was given to him from Auntie Pilahi. So you think about that. Every day you can say to yourself, did I leave blank better than I found it? Myself? Was I akahai to myself? Did I leave my coworkers better than I found them? Was I akahai towards them? Did I leave any physical setting that I was in? Was I akahai there? Did I pick up rubbish that I saw there? Did I straighten up a chair? Did I return the configuration of a classroom back to it? I mean, just akahai. Like, did I practice akahai in all those ways? Did I, did I tidy something up that I wasn't the one that created that mess, but just to leave it better for the next person? Did I straighten a picture? That might be your OCD, but still, it's akahai, right? Like, you're still leaving something better than you found it. And then in lokahi, to know that we're all connected as one whole from the beginning of existence, right? Did I look for, and Uncle Pono would say this as connection, not correction. Did I seek the connection between things, not correct, right? Not to seek to correct someone, but to really connect with them. so that I can find the oneness and the similarities, not the differences. And that's the practice of lokahi. And then olu olu, gentle strength, which is all of the goodness of like the values are, people think of aloha as kind and gentle and compassionate, and it is all that, but it is never weak. And so there is a strength in that. And then in ha'aha, to empty yourself so completely that you may hear and feel what is beneath the surface, but also so that you don't get in your own way of receiving gifts, of being a container that people can pour into, of being, and then of also releasing all your gifts, of pouring into other people what your container is full of, right? And so just that reciprocity of being a container that receives and gives, are we practicing that? Did we lean in so closely to someone who might have an opposing view for us that we're willing to be changed? To me, that's the ultimate test, right? Am I willing to walk out of this conversation thinking something completely different than I did before? I cannot always say that I am, but I think that's what ha'aha'a might be in my practice. And then in ahonui, to pause and hold your reaction and wait for that intention and purpose to rise through. I mean, as a mom and as a teacher and as a vice principal and as like a VA person and as, you know, an advocate for children and youth, like it is hard to pause. I'm like a problem solver, jump into action, do this, let's go here, let's figure this out, let's get that grant money together, why don't we do it this way? But what you learn in the pause sometimes is to stop reacting to stimulus and reacting to the things that are pushing against you and say like, what's my actual action that I want? What do I really want to achieve? Do I want to, at the end of the day, think, did I accomplish anything that I really wanted, or was I just reacting against everything else? Right. And that, again, like those kinds of pauses and teachings, like Uncle Pono gave us this gift. Okay. So now we're going to speed through this. And I just want you to, just a little bit of time on each value. This is what Uncle Pono actually sent us in his Higher Skills Academy cohort, which is what I'm going to invite you to. We call it Foundations of ALOHA now. We combine the two. Uncle Pono used to send us an email every week that would guide us in our practice. He also said we couldn't talk about it and we couldn't talk to each other, which I felt was incredibly hard. So I asked him if we could lift that part of the practice and meet every week. And so we started to. But okay, so the first one, akahai. Most people know this as kindness or tenderness. Aunty Pilahi taught Uncle Pono that akahai means grace. To practice akahai is to always be leaving things better than you find them. It does not carry an expectation of an award or reward or reciprocity even, just a desire to give. And again, hard. And when I think about something, when people are like, I gave all this stuff. Do you know what I'm doing for you? Do you know what I've done? I'm like, that's not akahai. Might be generosity, but it's not akahai. Akahai is to give without need of recognition, without even seeking it. And so when you think about akahai, and these are personal sort of prompts and reflections that we're going to go through for like the next, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes, is can you think of someone you know who always leave things better than they were before? How do they do it? Why do they do it? And just as personal reflection that I'll ask you at the end, if you have someone that came to mind for any of these specific values, I would love to hear it. But for the sake of time, um, although it pains me, we're going to go through each one without you actually sharing before the end. So, and then thinking again of like your action practice, right? So now you think about a person who's akahai. How do they do it? Why do they do it? And then think about yourself. Think of a way you might build your akahai muscle in your life. What is one way that you can be kind and gracious with yourself today? Always the hardest, especially for caregivers, to be kind and gracious to yourself. And so again, that's akahai. And I'm going to give like a minute before we move on to lokahi. So we can think about a person and a practice of akahai that we might want to hold with us as we go through the other four values. Okay. And I know it's speedy, and I do apologize for that. Each one of these is so ono, like you want to take so much time with each one. But that's why I'll invite you to our cohort where we spend like a week on each one. And so this is the next one is lokahi. Most people know this as unity. Aunty Pilahi taught Uncle Pono that lokahi is to be connected, to know we're all part of one whole universe since the beginning of time. To be lokahi is to look for and or recognize the connections which may not be readily recognizable. So as we think about lokahi, think of a person who you share a very close bond to. What defines that bond? Was that bond or relationship defined from your first moment share, or did it reveal itself over time? So we're thinking about that braid of existence and what intertwines us together. So a person you share a very close bond to, what defines or helps you to describe that bond? And was it from the first moment you shared, or did it kind of build over time? And then the second part of that prompt, again, that personal practice. Think of a way you might build your low kahi muscle in your life. What connects you to the people you work with, to the people you work for, and to the people in your community? And how might we strengthen that? Okay, I'm going to move on to olu olu. Most people know this as gentle or pleasant. Aunty Pilahi taught Uncle Pono that olu olu is gentle like you're carrying a baby. Gentle enough to not bruise or hurt the baby, but strong enough to carry the baby without dropping. It's to do the right thing at the right time, especially in the uncomfortable situations, because we see it from heaven's perspective. And this is where Uncle Pono's sort of favorite above all sides is what he called it, to be able to see in a space that there is oneness in all aspects. And that is part of the Lokahi Olu Olu intersection. So in Olu Olu, in your life, think of a difficult decision you faced in your life. What were the short versus long-term impacts? And who felt those impacts? Did they feel it was the best decision for them? I think that's part of that Olu Olu, like the ono of it, but also, man, sometimes just the terrible weight of it is that decisions that might make sense in the long and in the long view are sometimes really painful in the short view. Right? I told Uncle Pono in COVID, we were talking about why people were so uncomfortable, being at home and working and all of that. But okay, so thinking about Olu Olu, think of a way. Oh, it says my internet connection is unstable. Marlena, am I still okay? Can you hear me?
You broke up just for a second, so if you wouldn't mind just
Okay.
repeating the first part of the question for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. So thinking of the difficult decision you faced in your life, what were the short versus long-term impacts, and who felt those impacts? Did they feel it was the best decision for them? And then in terms of our own olu olu muscle or practice, think of something you do that is convenient in the short term for your life and lifestyle, but you know it's not the best choice in the long term. What could you do to start to make a change today? For some of us, it's the way we eat, or maybe it's not prioritizing self-care, or it might be, um, I don't know. I think for my parents, it was we were raised, as a family with our grandparents and great grandparents and aunties and uncles, because there's no way that they could have fielded all of us to all of our things at the same time, but they missed so many of the things. Um, just from working so much. And I think that um, we all try our best and we work together. But what are some, like, I have to make sure that I give my daughter more of my time than I used to. Um, and that means some more uncomfortable things when it comes to work. But just thinking about those things. And then we'll go to ha'aha'a because I know we're want to make sure we have time to share. And so in ha'aha'a, most people know this as humility. Aunty Pilahi translates ha'aha'a as to go empty, to be empty. In ha'aha'a, the practice is listening. To listen so deeply, we can hear what is being said beneath the words. Can we listen beyond and beneath the words, observing where the words are coming from and what might be causing the words? So in this one, think about plants, right? Like the roots that remain unseen when we admire the health of a plant. We are all fed by many resources under the surface, right? It's like when we think about how do we know a plant is healthy? Yes, we see the outside of it, like the leaves and the flowers and the fruits, But long before that, the health of the plant actually was determined by what its roots are soaking in. And so, what and who are some of the sources of your nourishment that feed your health and wellness? And so, just thinking about what is under the surface for you. And then thinking of a way you might build your own ha'aha'a muscle in your life. In observing people in different situations, can we perceive what we are projecting versus what we are seeing? What does it take to hear someone in their own words and see them through their own eyes? They are under the surface as well, right? There are things that we could not possibly know that shape why they say what they say, when they say it, how they act, just like they could not possibly know. But we project because it's easier, it's a shortcut. And so, how might we acknowledge our own depth and our own roots, and in that, empty ourselves perhaps enough to have the grace to give them the space to tell us about their own roots and what affects them? That idea of what does it take to hear someone in their own words and see them through their own eyes without judgment. And then the last of the values um, in that approach, ahunui. Ahunui literally translates to big breath. It is often said to mean patience, so taking a deep breath. Okay? Aunty Pilahi taught Anakala Pono that ahunui means waiting for the moment, to be alert to what is happening, but to refrain from reacting quickly before digging deeper into what you're feeling. Noticing the moments that are in your life that cause or inspire reaction, but pausing for a moment to get past reaction and put your energy into intentional action. So, in that practice, you want to think of a moment when you reacted quickly to a situation. What would have happened if you paused instead? Would the intensity increase or decrease? Would the outcome have changed? I personally can think of many circumstances and moments when I reacted too quickly to a situation and the outcome would have been very different had I paused. I've learned that over time. And my daughter has a practice. She's 15 and so wise. We talked about what is our mechanism for ahunui. And when I was her age, I would just mouth off, which meant I had no ahunui. And she says, when somebody says something that I don't agree with, or I feel very compelled to say something very quickly, she said, I drink water. She takes a drink from her flask because she's always carrying it, right? It gives her a moment, right? It gives her a moment. It goes through that process, and by the time you swallow the water, maybe you will have come out the other side of that with a slightly different reaction. I love that ahunui practice. And so that's, a way that you might build your ahunui muscle in your life. And then do you recognize the difference between intentional action versus reaction to stimuli in yourself and in others? So I think often we judge people by the way they're reacting to things. And it takes a lot to understand reaction versus action. Um, Knowing a lot more about them and being willing to spend time. And so that's the ahunui practice. Now, what I want to get to is time for us to share. So this is just some prompts that might be useful for this. Which aloha value and practice did you feel most comfortable with out of the ones that we shared? Which one was least comfortable? And maybe what are some questions or feelings that are coming up? And so I want to give this time perhaps a few minutes for us to think about these questions. And while we're doing that, um, I'm going to give you a couple more things to think about and then we'll open up for discussion. So again, what aloha value and practice do you feel most comfortable with? Which one is the least comfortable for you? Whether it's about your own practice or about understanding it, and then what are some questions or feelings? I also want us to think about medicine, right? Uncle Pono always said that stories are medicine, and that our stories are medicine that we've created for ourselves in our life challenges. And I took that to mean that if we are all healing from something, which is one of my friend Adrian Michael says it, and I know lots of philosophers say something similar. Like Adrian Michael always says, like, we're all healing from something. You might not know what someone else is going through, but just know that what unites us is that we're all healing from something. Um, and I talked to Uncle Pono about that, and I said, well, if you say stories are medicine, and we know we're all healing from something, that means each of us is a medicine keeper and a medicine holder. And so we gain medicine. We grow our own medicine in our challenging moments. Maybe even in our moments of joy, we store up those happy memories too as our medicine. And so think of a circumstance in personal or professional life when aloha shown to you or even by you fell short, right? So you were like, this was definitely not a great situation. There is no aloha here. Like this was full of contention or it did not get resolved. And then like, what medicine did you gain? Like, how did you grow from that for the people around you? Because it could be that some of the values are hard to practice, but it's because they're the ones that you're most actively engaged in. So you actually are a practitioner of aloha as well in a lot of these spaces. So that's just something to think about is the medicine that you've been harvesting. And then before we open up for discussion, I just wanted to share that if you want to dive a little deeper into this, we run a free 5-week cohort. We meet right now. We used to do synchronous morning sessions, and now we've transitioned for just this one cohort to asynchronous, where we're sending out short messages that direct you to a slide deck that have a prompt and an activity and things to think about. But we still meet synchronously in the afternoons, 4:30 to 5. Um, and that's Monday through Friday. And we practice akahai on Mondays, lokahi on Tuesdays, olu olu on Wednesdays, ha'aha on Thursdays, and Fridays is aho nui. And then on Sunday, we meet to talk about Uncle Pono's stories and his values. And then there's a link there to register for our upcoming cohort if you would like to join us. Um, and and then we already put in the chat that there is a library of Uncle Pono wisdom that you can access at oedb.biz. If you go to oedb.biz, which is Oahu Economic Development Board, you can click on a link that says Aloha Our Wisdom Center. There's a place called videos, and you'll see all of Uncle Pono's videos. The first two in that scrolling bar were created by Uncle Roy Kimura, who's in the session. Thank you, Uncle Roy, for helping us to continue to learn from Uncle Pono in that way. And so the last thing that I kind of want to think about is, yes, we talked about the individual practices of aloha and about those muscles of akahai, lokahi, olu, olu, ha'aha, and ahunui. But in sharing Aunty Pilahi, this is yet another definition that she provided to the world. It's in one of her books. And she says, aloha, as translated and interpreted by my ancestors, was an element of life. And so, element, air, water, sunshine, like it's elemental, right? And aloha is element. It was an element vital and important to daily habits in life. Aloha for them was the spiritual essence endowed to man in his and her beginning. Aloha was that tiny glow or spark to and in life which enabled man to imply his thoughts and apply his heart to the imagination and emotion of his and her soul. And so aloha is your divine spark. It's the thing that you were born into this universe with. It's the thing that guides your path and hopefully is protected and nurtured by people around you. And if it isn't, we hope that on our windy and windy roads we meet others that want to provide us shelter and nourishment for our light. And for those of us that are experiencing abundance in care and in kindness, that we can give that to others who may need that to grow their light. And so just thinking about all these ways, like the aloha practices of Uncle Pono, I think are designed to help us build and breathe our light and to see the light in every single person so that we have come to recognize in Lokahi that that light is actually the light of all beings, right? Past, present, and future, all at the same time. And we each hold a part of it. Um, okay, and I know that's a rough transition to like, let's go back to thinking about the aloha practices and what we might be thinking about, what was challenging, some questions or feelings that are coming up for you. And if it's helpful, there's a framework here from my friends at Project Wayfinder that talk about a spark, a stretch, or a struggle. And so a spark is something new that you learn to realize a stretch is something that felt like a challenge or like an edge for you. Like I got close to the edge, got a little precarious there. I had to really like brace myself for it. And the struggle is something that pushed you beyond your stretch zone into an unproductive space. I always tell people, like, in education, we study the zone of proximal development. And it's like, here's your comfort zone. And then here's the stretch zone, or like the growth zone, right? Where you get to when people push you and prod you, but you know it's necessary. And then there's the panic zone, where I call that my turtle zone. I love my turtle, but like I'm gonna go and hide deep in my shell, and you are never getting me back out because you have scared me so much. Right. And so that is the panic zone. Like if I take people past their point, my students past their point of like stretching, they get to the point where you just shut down and you're like, nope, this is a no-no zone for me. I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to touch it. It's too much for me. It's not anything that I feel is a part of what I need. You don't necessarily have to share your struggle zone, or if you run into struggle, I'm happy to hear it and receive it if you do want to share. But for today, I thought maybe we can take the next 15 minutes to see if people want to share either in the chat or unmute and share the spark, like something that you feel like was like, yes, I totally connect with this, and here's an aloha practice that I really am comfortable with, or a stretch or a struggle in that. I'll just stop sharing my screen so that we can make space for those that might want to share with us what they're experiencing.
I would like to say that watching, of course, I just forgot his name. Your teacher. I didn't write it down. I have to write it down to remember it. But
Uncle Pono. It's okay. His name was Pono.
oh no, yeah. As I'm watching the video, as he's talking, he, I don't know him. This was the first time being introduced to him, if you will. But even in his physical absence, I started to cry. Like I wasn't expecting. I didn't come here to do that. I came here to really learn, and I was just like listening, and then I'm like, oh, this is really good stuff. I'm taking notes, and then just tears. I'm like, what the heck is going on? Like automatic. He had a way. I feel like I know this guy, and then my prayer was like, I want to be like him. I don't want to be him, obviously, but just the way he explains it, and knowing that he's carrying out his teachers, and then beyond his teacher, right? He's carrying out who his ancestors are. He's carrying that out, and I think that's so lost in general, right, in the world, And I believe it. I think for me, what's challenging are a struggle and a stretch and a spark all at the same time is waiting for the moment. So ohonu. Am I saying that right?
Ahonui. Yes.
Ahanui. Ahanui. And see, even the word is like I'm like just still learning, you know what I mean? So ahanui is a stretch because you're waiting for the moment, not like boredom waiting, but it's like this, you're ready. You're ready. And so that's a challenge. It's a challenge that I want to take, that I will take. And yeah, it helps me not to give up. So that was good.
Thank you, Mark, for sharing. That was beautiful. I think too in that moment about waiting for the moment, right? And when he says like it may never come in your lifetime, and yet it guarantee won't come in your lifetime if you're not waiting for it. And so there's this idea of like the readiness is part of the journey. And I think about the cross. I always cross or braid the two together, like Nainoa and Uncle Pono, because they occupy similar spaces in my life and um my growth. But Nainoa, when he talks about his teacher Mal talking to him about, can you see the island? Can you see the island? And he's like, no. So frustrated. I can't see the island in my eyes. He's like, no, can you see it? Like in your mind. Can you see it in your heart? Because if you can't see it there, your eyes will never see it. Right. And so I think about that too. Like Nainoa would never find islands if he couldn't ready himself for the finding. And it takes faith. Faith to launch into something that you're saying, I don't know if this is ever going to happen. But if I don't make progress towards it, I know it won't. And I know it talks about that. He talks about that too, the relationship between courage and fear. Right. I'll bring in one last quote before I allow other people to speak because I've been speaking for so long. But I'm like, I want to share my know with you too. Partially because he just FaceTimed me and I don't like that when he does that because that means he can see me if I answer. So I don't answer. But so he said to me once, we were talking, we were talking about like people that were destroying the earth and people that are protecting it. He said, we have to stay half a step ahead all the time. And I was like, okay, like, what is that? He's like, we got to wake up every day and be half a step ahead of those that are destroying the earth. Like those that are doing good for the world have to be half a step ahead. He says the same with courage and fear. Your courage has to be half a step ahead of your fear. Not too much more though, because your fear is your best friend. It keeps you safe. It has you imagine all of the possibilities, and your courage takes you beyond that. Right? But not too far ahead. It's got to be two hulls of the same canoe, double hulled voyaging canoe. You gotta be walking it forward, not letting one take off so far in front that there's no monitoring, there's no communication. But your fear can't be leading because that'll keep you tied to the dock. Right? Like fear leading is paralysis if courage is far behind. Courage leading without the fear, who even knows where you're gonna go? And so yeah, it's reckless, right? So I just think about that. Sorry, I know, and I'm crying. I think about Uncle Pono and just that ahunui and what does it mean to be preparing for the moment forever?
Actually, I wanted to share that the aloha attributes that the alanui, lokahi, the rest of it, um, it was remind me of my mother.
Thank you, Tammy. That's beautiful. In the previous session, I mentioned to folks like I always and I say this to myself every day when people say like, "Oh, what's your gut telling you?" And I because at the first time that I said it out loud, after that I can't get the vision out of my head. But I was like, "Well, it's your umbilical cord, right? Is your gut, and it connects you to your mom, and then to all the mothers ever in your existence, like thousands of moms telling you what to do." And so, like, so I just like, oh, we're so blessed, and yet, like, oh, sometimes when my mom tells me what to do, I'm like, you can't tell me what to do. I'm an adult, like but and my grandma telling me what to do, I'm like, I will listen. My great grandma, I will listen. So it just somewhere in that line of mothers of womb energy is the healing and the practice and the aloha, right? Like that's our the genealogy of care that comes with what we're born into. So thank you for bringing your mom into the space with us.
I'd like to just say mahalo nui. It was very refreshing to hear um, everything you have to share. And also coming back from Aunty Pilahi, that just keeps the generations going and to know that we're always moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Is there anyone that has maybe even a question or even a reflection? Doesn't have to be about any of the prompts. Whatever comes to mind and to heart for you is definitely welcome in this space.
I do. I just want to say, hearing everything you say is so important. And I actually shared the PowerPoint with my daughter's Kumu Kaveo because everything that you taught about, they're learning about Lokahi. And the questions you asked us, she gets asked every day for her homework. So her teacher was like, this is amazing. I'm like, I know. She's just talking about everything she's trying to implement with these fourth graders, 100 of them, and to learn everything they can before we go on a big island trip. And she was just like, oh my God, I'm going to implement this in all of her studies for next week's lesson. So that's that PowerPoint. She was just like, I have to send her the video, but she was like, oh my God, thank you. She's like, where do you get to work where you get to attend this? I was like, so it's just that connection, what we're trying to do for Kiki is so real. And I'm happy I can share what you brought and put it further into my kids' school. And she's just so thankful, and so am I.
Oh, thank you. That's beautiful. I love that. I know we're so blessed, yeah, to be able to spend like such time to even think about aloha. Like, who gets time? I'm crying again. Who gets like 2 hours, 3 hours of their day to think about like what caring and kindness means and how to create that in spaces and re-find it in spaces that it might have gone sleeping for a while, right? Like, it's incredible. And to celebrate Uncle Pono. I'm so happy.
I think it set a precedence or how you say an aura in the Hawaiian Islands, just even saying the word, because it's even though we don't how you say understand it or have the true meaning of it, but just saying it, it's a breath. So the breath goes out in the wind. And I think it sets a precedence in the whole environment in the Hawaiian Islands.
Thank you so much for that. I remember because I remember I'm like just talking to you like we're sitting around the table. I'm just gonna like so I remember I work in the entrepreneurship community too. I used to like youth entrepreneurs. I run an incubator and my friend Melly, she gave this presentation and she talked about how aloha in Hawaii and all these things around Hawaiian culture is a $30 billion industry worldwide. Less than 10% of that actually comes back to Hawaii or feeds Hawaii's economy. And I was mad. I was like, what do you mean? And this is after like the Chicago Aloha Poke thing where Aunty Pilahi went to go protest. I mean, just all, and I was like, what? I mean, like that's an example of that, right? She's like, it is, absolutely. Like Hawaii and Aloha, the Hawaii brand name, all of those things make so much money for so many other countries. Everywhere. And I was like, wow, the Alice report had just come out, and I was like, so mad. So I had to go talk to Uncle Pono. And of course, he like makes me like calm down. He's like, "Isn't that so great?" I was like, "What you mean? What you mean so great?" And he's like, "Isn't it so great that Aloha and Hawaii are so desired by people, that it resonates so deeply that even if they never came here, they want to wear something that says it. They want to eat something that says it." I was like, "I'm a jerk." Like, yes, okay. Like it's like, okay, but how might we turn the tides of economic development, since you're the po'o of Oahu Economic Development Board, so that some of that comes back to feed our families, to feed this aina, to feed this place that people have been extracting from. We, like he always says, we export everything good and we import things we don't need. Right? And so, like, how might we grow aloha and aina at home and bring that strength and still attract people? He used to always say too, they talk about the snowbird. I used to live in Arizona, so they talk about like the snowbirds, and here it's the kolea, right? Come over here, you sit, you eat all this, you get all fat, and like, and then you like go away. And so don't be a kolea, don't come and take all the resources and go. And again, he's scolding me, right? He's like, isn't that so great that people like the kolea, they can come here all bus up and like sit on our shores, swim in our waters, eat our food, and grow healthy and strong and make the journey home. And I was like, again, I'm like, I'm a jerk. Like, try harder to be more like Pono. But it's those kinds of things. Like, I think it's that idea of, he said, we are the source, we're the resource, Hawaii is the place that people come to, that they seek out to understand aloha, which is the oneness of being, to understand their best and most beautiful self. And he said, what we've forgotten to do is to ask them to love us so much that they want to protect us, right? Like, we have to ask people to fall in love with Hawaii, not just come and take the resources. He said, I don't even think they know that they're doing that. We're so used to buying things and purchasing and hoarding them or getting what we can. He said, but if they loved us as much as we love us, as much as we love Hawaii, as much as we love this culture, they would also want to protect us too. We just have to invite them to love us. I'm like in deep weeping now, sorry.
Mihi, I think It's so funny you brought that up because when Made in Hawaii came, there were so many controversies with people saying, "Oh, this is made in Hawaii," and then it said "made in China." That was a huge thing. And I worked with entrepreneurs, and they're like, "This not made in Hawaii," and I'm like, like you said, it has to do with the pricing, and we want to make things in Hawaii, but we just don't have those resources connected here. And that's unfortunate. Doesn't mean that the love isn't coming. Our designs are all local, but that come out and they're like, it's not made in Hawaii, it's made in China. I'm like, but it started in Hawaii. I think what you said, the education, we're not portraying it to our businesses as that goal, like the mission. And when you said kolea, my son's name is Kolea. So now when you say don't be a kolea, my son's literal name is Kolea. And his dad and I met because of a kolea bird. So it's so funny that you say that phrase because now I just think my son's just being a kolea, like just taking from everyone, even though he's Native Hawaiian. I was like, I've never heard it that way. So thank you. When I say it like that, I'm gonna be like, don't be a kolea when his name is literally that meaning. So thank you for sharing that.
But Uncle Pono loved it, right? Like to him, the kolea was the sign that of everything good in Hawaii.
You signed that I was pregnant, yes, and knowing that I was going to carry children. When they come, my husband's from Alaska Barrow, Native Hawaiian, and I was pregnant. They meet, they transfer from Hawaii, and um, it was just crazy that we met on different paths because we're Hawaiian. That's how we met through Kamehameha. And just when I saw a kolea bird, I found out I was pregnant the next day. And I said, it's because I looked at a kolea bird, I got pregnant. It's like literally.
I was
So,
gonna migrate back
yeah.
to Alaska and back every season.
Which is incredible that journey that they make. So we make that journey ourselves as a family every July to honor that and remember where we came from as well. But the phrase you use, I'm gonna explain that to him later, what you said. So he knows that's another form it could be used.
We love them though, don't we? Those kolea, they're so beautiful, transformative. It reminds me every year of what's possible for every person when we find our safe space, when we find our long journey, right? My friend Maya Satoro, she talks about the long walks and about that journey that you go on, that walk and the journey of your soul and what your spirit finds along the way and how it meets with other people. And that's our journey. And I'm so glad that I know we're at time, but our journey brought us together into this space. And I thank you all for being here and for accepting my teary and all over the place kind of things. And also for bringing Uncle Pono into this space. I so appreciate all of you. And I know we might have a little bit of time. I know it's the end of the presentations and there's a closing coming up. And so I just wanted to offer the space to those. If I think Marlene, we could hang out for like another couple minutes if we needed to or wanted to.
Well, some thoughts I had, I came from Big Island to visit Maui. And when we came to Maui, it was so authentic.
Mm.
Like even the lady behind the ticket counter was like, hello, she was like a real human being, treating me like a human being in that moment, fully present. And as we wandered through Maui, it was like, everybody's like that. Because the people's hearts were like ripped open, right? And it made that authenticity and sincerity and kindness and gentleness come forth. So I saw the thing about the queen and how she said, heaven, in heaven, all is one. And that's our job. Also, you're saying our job is to be the representatives of heaven here on Mother Earth. Fundamentally, that's our job, and that's aloha.
Yeah.
So I really needed this today, and I really appreciate that time.
Thank you so much. That was so beautiful. Everybody come to how do you pronounce your name? Annika?
Yeah.
Come to Annika's session. She's so eloquent. I just blubber through things and cry. I leave like a slug trail. I leave like a trail of tears and snot behind me. I so appreciate everybody being here, and please reach out. The PDF has my email address. It has my cell phone number on it too. Go ahead and call. Actually, if you call, but text first or leave a voicemail. I know I used to give out my phone number on the radio and at presentations, so I still get really a lot of calls, and I don't always answer all of them. So I think it's like 800 something missed calls on my phone. And so yeah, but if you text, my number of unreplied to texts are 0, and so that's a pretty good way. And then email is also good. So please do reach out. And I just I have so much gratitude for you all for creating and conditioning this space to be able to share. Thanks everyone. Have a beautiful day.